a little bit about coaches that we didn't, if there was anybody we wanted to leave or not. So let's talk a little bit about players. Are there, I think there are some guys that show flashes. Let's talk about some guys that you don't want to see go, right? Because obviously the portal's about to open up in a little over a week here. We're going to have some guys that jump out. There's a lot of guys that I am very excited about not having to watch play Florida State football anymore. But there are some young guys that I would hate to lose at this point. I've got some ideas. I've got some names, but why don't you give me a few of yours and then we'll go on.
So Luke, I think, is a guy that, if Brock leaves, that would suck. But at the same time, I think it'd be best for Florida State and for Brock for him to move on at this point. Clearly, Mike's made up his mind. I think that's an easy one. Hakeem Williams is a guy that I would love to see stay at Florida State, and I do think he has a lot of potential. And maybe with Ron Dugan's out of the door now and whoever's coming in, I think that that's a lot of opportunity as far as that goes. Singleton, I thought he ran hard against Florida. I really do. He ran really well. Omar Graham Jr., Blake Nicholson, those are kind of the first guys to come to my mind.
Yeah, I think the tight ends are, obviously a lot of the ones
Landon Thomas, yeah.
Jump in my mind. I think Landon Thomas and Amari Williams both have really promising futures. I know he had the muff punt yesterday, but some of the young wide receivers with McCoy and Moore.
McCoy could be a stud.
Yeah, it's hard for me to be too mad at him for the one fumble when you had 7 other ones in the game too. But I think he would be big. I love the way Edwin Joseph played yesterday. I think there's some young DBs that are really good, Quindarius Jones and others that, whether they had big games yesterday or not, I think we're really big. If there was any, so here's one that's not even a young guy. I don't know if you could offer, Azariah Thomas, like an NIL package to come back and try and improve his draft stock. To me, he's a maybe round 3 or 4 guy, but could he improve that with, a little bit better year? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying he definitely could. And I'm not trying to, I don't have like a draft grade for him. Maybe he's even lower, but I think that's somebody that, if you could kind of NIL package for him, that would be one that maybe makes sense. I think that Daniel Lyons, there's some young defensive linemen that you'd want to go get. There's some young offensive linemen like Otto and early and stuff but I don't really see those guys leaving anyway. So I'm not like super worried about that, but yeah, I think there's some promising pieces that like have done some good things, but I don't know. I thought Norvell was kind of weird in the press conference, like making, when he was talking about like guys leaving or whatever, like, oh, if they want to leave, then I mean, you're 2-10, bro. Like if you want to leave, like, how do you, oh, well then they're not a real one. I don't know, man. Like you're not a real one, bro. You just went 2-10. Like I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like, don't be getting on the kids for leaving a dumpster fire. Like if my house is burning down, I ain't going to, oh, look how brave I am for sticking it out, especially if I end up at BC or something, that's one thing. But, if George is offering me money, man, like, shoot, I got to consider my options here. But I do think, how they not only do in the portal when they go and look at guys, but also trying to hold guys in. I think he's going to have a hell of a job to try and retain this roster. I'll get right back to chatting with Richie, but first I do want to give some love to our friends over at the Mango Board. They've supported us all season, and we continue to appreciate that. The next time you are at your local grocer, make sure that you grab a couple of mangoes, not asking you to do anything else. You don't have to sign up for anything or enter some promo code or sign up for a subscription. Grab a couple of mangoes the next time you're at Publix or your local grocer, and you're helping support not only the Mango Board, but our channel and Florida State Athletics as well, as they partner with both us and Florida State. We appreciate the Mango Board for their support. Now back to the video.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I would never want to be a college football coach because you have to recruit high school, you have to recruit the portal, and you have to recruit your own roster. That is such a task to do, especially coming off a 2-10 season. How do you tell your kids that currently are on your roster, hey, stay at Florida State, this is where we want you? How do you convince other players from the portal that, hey, come to Florida State, you may only have 1 or 2 years left, but we're going to compete for a national title. And how do you convince high school kids that, hey, come here, we're building something special? It's an almost an impossible job. And to your point earlier, I don't think Mike turns this around, but that is the job that these guys have to do. If I was a college football coach and I had an opportunity to get to the NFL, I would take it instantly.
Yeah, I think the one thing that benefits Mike is like when you look at it, like how many teams out there really are competing for national titles. So like not being able to sell that is to me like not the biggest deal. You know, 7, 8, 10, I want to say 10, 12, really like not even 12. Like let's be real with ourselves. Like I, kids aren't going to you look at the teams that are ranked 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Like those teams aren't really competing for national titles. Now, is the field a little bit more open this year?
They won't
Sure.
be
But
there
like,
next year either. Yeah.
yeah. And so I don't know. Like, I don't think that that's something. Now, if you're going head to head with Bama or Oregon or Georgia or teams like that, then yeah, I mean, you're not going to be able to sell that. But I do think the portal is mostly about, playing time and money, like get me to the NFL and pay me. And that's what, kids want. Because most of these kids know that they're not competing for a title necessarily. But though in the ACC, like it doesn't take much to get the conference championship. Unless you're Miami, then obviously it's pretty tough to do. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're gonna have to be aggressive in the portal. There's a lot of guys on this roster, though. We don't have to name the names on this one, but there are a lot of guys on this roster that. Yeah, Florida State needs to. We'll just say this: needs to revamp the entire defensive line.
Yes.
Like, needs to move on from there. And to me, when you look at next year, we've talked about this, but I kind of like the linebackers. I kind of like the defensive backs. I kind of like the wide receivers, running backs, some of the young talent that's there. It comes down to the trenches, offense and defensive line, and quarterback. And what can they do there? Do you go get a quarterback in the portal? Well, I think that depends on how good the player is. Is there a Cam Ward level player that jumps in the portal? If so, you better go get him, right? Because that's probably the difference in 3 or 4 wins. If not, you probably should ride with Luke, And so, yeah, and then offense and defensive line, like you're going to have a lot of work to do because to me, that's what it's going to come down to. Like next year's success or failure won't have anything to do with the coordinators, won't have anything to do with Mike. It'll be offense and defensive line. Did we retool that? Did we keep the guys we want to keep? Did we go out and get guys that'll help? If so, we'll be fine. If not, probably be Mike's last year in tally.
Yeah. No, I think that's spot on. Football games are won in the trenches, right? A guy like Trent Dilfer does not win a Super Bowl without an amazing defense that starts up front with that defensive line, right? Brad Johnson, we love him. He's a Florida State guy. He graduated from Florida State. He's been on our podcast, right? He was not a phenomenal NFL quarterback, but he won a Super Bowl because he had amazing trenches like guys like Warren Sapp there for him. So that's kind of where we are. And I agree 100%, TJ. We have to revamp the trenches. And this offensive line is the first place that we need to look because it has been atrocious since you and I were in Dublin to when you were in Tallahassee on Saturday.
Yeah, and it just got worse and worse and worse. I even joked that, is there a way that we could I'm not trying to be a jerk, but fire Atkins again for how bad the offensive line was playing after 7 or 8 sacks in one game against a mid Florida team. It was certainly something to behold. So,